There are moments in life when someone tries to convince you that you're standing at the end of your story. But sometimes, they're only standing at the beginning. When billionaire investor Victor Langley pushed 5 rusted, broken motorcycles across the floor of an abandoned warehouse, the room erupted in laughter. "Congratulations," Victor said with a smug grin. "Here's your inheritance." Everyone laughed. Everyone except the man holding the title papers. Because Daniel Carter wasn't looking at broken motorcycles. He was looking at 5 chances. And 20 years later, those 5 forgotten machines would become the foundation of a company valued at over $300 million. But this isn't really a story about money. It's about what happens when someone refuses to let humiliation decide their future. The small town of Ashford, Colorado, woke slowly every morning. Daniel Carter always woke before it did. At 5:30, he'd make pancakes for his 8-year-old daughter Lily and 6-year-old son Ben before squeezing in an hour at the neighborhood repair garage where he rented a single workbench. His customers weren't wealthy. Teachers, delivery drivers, retired veterans, college students trying to keep old cars alive. Daniel charged less than he probably should have. "People aren't just fixing engines," he'd tell Lily while wiping grease from his hands. "They're trying to keep life moving." After losing his wife, Emily, to a sudden illness 4 years earlier, Daniel had learned that kindness often looked ordinary. A discounted repair. A free oil change. Staying late so someone could get to work the next morning. He wasn't building wealth. He was building trust. Even if no one seemed to notice. Across the state, Victor Langley had become famous for noticing only one thing: success. His investment empire covered technology, luxury hotels, commercial real estate, and private aviation. Business magazines called him brilliant. Employees called him intimidating. Former partners called him impossible. Victor believed compassion slowed people down. He admired winners. He dismissed everyone else. When his aging uncle Henry Langley passed away, Victor assumed he'd inherit every piece of the family's forgotten industrial property. Instead, Henry's will surprised everyone. Half the abandoned motorcycle warehouse went to Victor. The other half went to Daniel Carter. The room fell silent. Victor frowned. "Who is Daniel Carter?" The attorney smiled softly. "A mechanic." Victor laughed so hard he nearly spilled his coffee. "A mechanic?" Daniel was just as shocked. Years earlier, Henry Langley had wandered into his garage with an ancient motorcycle that nobody else wanted to repair. Daniel spent 3 weekends rebuilding it. When Henry tried to pay extra, Daniel refused. "You already paid the bill." Henry had asked why. Daniel simply answered, "My kids are watching." Neither man spoke about it again. Daniel never imagined that one act of honesty had stayed in Henry's heart. The warehouse looked hopeless. Dust covered everything. Rain leaked through sections of the roof. Broken shelves leaned against cracked concrete walls. And in the center sat 5 motorcycles that looked like they'd never run again. Victor walked through wearing an expensive tailored suit. Daniel arrived wearing work boots. Victor looked around and laughed. "I'll buy your half." Daniel asked, "For what?" $10,000. Daniel shook his head. "I'd rather see what's here." Victor smirked. "Suit yourself." Then he kicked one of the motorcycles toward Daniel. "There you go." The rusted machine scraped loudly across the floor. Everyone nearby laughed. Victor spread his arms dramatically. 5 priceless treasures. Daniel didn't answer. He simply rolled the motorcycles into one corner. One by one. Every evening after work, Daniel brought Lily and Ben to the warehouse. While they colored pictures on old cardboard boxes, Daniel cleaned tools. Sorted bolts. Organized shelves. Patched the leaking roof himself. One evening Lily asked, "Dad, why are we fixing a building nobody wants?" Daniel smiled. "Sometimes people only see what's broken." "What do you see?" "A future." Months passed. Daniel discovered something hidden beneath decades of neglect. Blueprints. Old engineering notebooks. Prototype motorcycle frames. Letters between Henry Langley and local mechanics describing affordable, fuel-efficient motorcycles designed for working families. Henry had never wanted luxury bikes. He wanted dependable transportation ordinary people could actually afford. Daniel felt something click. The idea deserved another chance. Instead of chasing investors, Daniel invited people from town. Retired welders. Community college instructors. Young mechanics looking for experience. Military veterans rebuilding civilian careers. Everyone received something unusual. Ownership. Not charity. Not temporary wages. Actual partnership. "If we build this together," Daniel said, "everyone should have a reason to care." The warehouse slowly transformed into a workshop. Then into a factory. Then into something bigger. Not because anyone became rich overnight. But because everyone believed they mattered. Victor noticed. Mostly because local newspapers stopped writing about his newest acquisitions. And started writing about Daniel's employee-owned motorcycle company. Victor rolled his eyes. Cute story. It'll disappear. It didn't. Customers loved the motorcycles because they were reliable, simple to repair, and built by people who actually listened to mechanics instead of marketing executives. Families bought them. Small businesses bought fleets. Delivery companies ordered hundreds. Every customer received a handwritten thank you card signed by whoever assembled the bike. People noticed. Because genuine appreciation can't be manufactured. One afternoon a supplier accidentally delivered expensive aluminum parts Daniel hadn't ordered. The mistake would have saved the company nearly $200,000. His accountant whispered. "They'll probably never notice." Daniel remembered something Emily used to say. "Character is what you do when nobody's keeping score." He called the supplier. The parts were returned. 3 months later. That supplier signed the largest contract in company history. You were the only customer who ever corrected a mistake that benefited you. Trust had become more valuable than shortcuts. Years rolled forward. The company expanded carefully. Never too fast. Never beyond what people could support together. Daniel introduced apprenticeship programs for teenagers who weren't interested in traditional college paths. Single parents received flexible schedules. Retired mechanics became mentors. Employees struggling financially could apply to an anonymous assistance fund paid for voluntarily by management bonuses. Daniel insisted on one unusual rule. Every executive, including himself, spent one afternoon each month working beside assembly teams. No exceptions. No title should make someone forget how work actually feels, he often said. Victor's empire looked larger. But inside, cracks had begun to appear. High employee turnover. Lawsuits. Public criticism. Executives leaving for competitors. Quarterly profits still looked impressive. Culture did not. One board member quietly suggested visiting Daniel's company. Victor scoffed. "I'm not taking management advice from a mechanic." Then came the recession. Luxury spending dropped sharply. Several of Victor's investments collapsed. Meanwhile, Daniel's practical motorcycles became even more popular because families needed affordable transportation. The company adapted instead of panicking. Employees voted together on temporary salary adjustments that prevented layoffs. Nobody wanted coworkers losing homes. They shared the burden. Business magazines finally understood something Wall Street hadn't. The company's greatest asset wasn't manufacturing. It was loyalty. At the 20th anniversary celebration, thousands gathered outside the expanded campus. Children painted miniature motorcycles. Food trucks lined the streets. Former apprentices now supervised entire departments. Lily, now an industrial designer, unveiled the newest electric commuter bike. Ben directed community outreach programs that had already trained hundreds of young mechanics across the country. Daniel stood quietly behind the stage. He never liked being the center of attention. An employee found him. "They're waiting." He smiled nervously. "I'd rather hear everyone else's stories." During the ceremony, reporters asked what the company was worth. Someone answered. "Just over $300 million. The crowd applauded politely. Daniel stepped to the microphone. "I appreciate that number." He paused. "But it isn't the number I'm proud of." People leaned closer. "We've helped over 4,000 apprentices begin careers." Applause. "We've never had a company-wide layoff." Louder applause. "More than 70% of our leadership started on the workshop floor." Cheers. "And every year our employees choose charities in their own communities because kindness should travel farther than our motorcycles ever can." The crowd stood. Not because of the valuation. Because they understood what had actually been built. After the ceremony ended, Daniel noticed an older man standing alone near the original warehouse doors. Victor Langley. His expensive suit looked the same. His expression didn't. "I almost didn't come," Victor admitted. Daniel nodded. "I'm glad you did." Victor looked toward the original 5 motorcycles, now restored and displayed inside glass cases. "I thought they were junk." Daniel smiled gently. "So did a lot of people." Victor took a long breath. "I spent years proving I was smarter than everyone else. And I forgot to become someone people wanted to build with." Silence settled between them. Finally Victor asked, "Do you think people can change?" Daniel looked toward families laughing across the courtyard. "I've seen engines people said were impossible to fix." Victor chuckled quietly. "I suppose people aren't much different." Daniel extended his hand. "We all need rebuilding sometimes." Victor shook it. Not because either man needed the gesture, but because forgiveness often frees both people. Before leaving, Victor wandered into the small museum built inside the original warehouse. He stopped in front of the first rusted motorcycle. A small plaque rested beneath it. It didn't mention billionaires. It didn't mention business victories. It didn't mention company valuation. Instead it read, "The future rarely arrives looking impressive. Treat people with dignity before they've succeeded. You never know which broken thing is quietly becoming extraordinary." Victor stood there longer than anyone noticed. Years later, visitors continued asking Daniel the same question. What was the secret? Was it timing? Business strategy? Engineering? Investment? Daniel always smiled before answering. The motorcycles mattered. But they weren't the foundation. The foundation was every person who believed they still had something valuable to give. He would point toward the workshop floor where experienced employees patiently taught newcomers. Machines can build products. Only kindness builds people. And when you build people well, they create futures no one could have predicted. If this story leaves you with one thought today, let it be this. Never measure someone's future by their current circumstances. The person others laugh at today may simply be carrying opportunities that nobody else has the patience to recognize. Success may earn admiration, but kindness earns something far more lasting. It earns trust. And trust can build a legacy that no amount of money ever could.